Okay. Hi, everyone. I think we are ready to start. Okay, so thanks to be here for this session. My main idea here is to have an exchange with you about Mac management lifecycle, sharing some idea of my side, and also I expect you to actually participate to this talk and to share your opinion also on this. So it's actually more an exchange than a lecture. But let's start by introducing myself. My name is Yoann Gini. I'm a French guy, like you can hear. I mainly work as a system and network administrator for a company I created, who mainly work for SMB, for the SMB market, and also a little bit for the education market. Doing a lot of things related to mass scale management and security. And I also a software developer who wrote maybe tools like you already used, like AID Inspector or LOIT or things like that. For this talk, the main idea is to talk about the life cycle you may experience in terms of managing macOS. The official one and the not so official one, let's say. Because there is clearly what Apple are expecting from us to do, and also what we could do even if it's not officially supported. So that's the main idea. And to be more clear, this talk is only 19 slides at all. So the goal for me here is to exchange, to have a way for us to show what is the official way, what is the alternative way, what you are doing on your side, and have some feedback from everyone to help every of us. So we will go through this map of events that you are supposed to deal with during the regular life cycle of your Mac. And we will only talk about the Mac version of it. The iOS version of it is really the simplest one. So we will talk about the most hardest one, the Mac one. And we will see that we have a main path and an alternate path on this lifecycle, and we will see what we can do with this. So let's start with the first step you are supposed to handle. Actually buying your Mac. You need your Mac to be here from somewhere. So the official way of doing things is to buy your Mac from a trusted provider, allowed to do distribution for organization, whereas it's school or enterprise. It has to be someone who can distribute to Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager your list of serial number. That means buying directly from the Apple retail store, using the custom online store from Apple, or working with an authorized reseller who do school or business distribution officially from the Apple point of view. This is the mandatory start point if you want to follow the official way of doing things. And what the thing will do is when you order something, as soon as it gets on the delivery path, your serial number will be fed into Apple Business or School Manager, and then you can start to work with them before they get actually delivered. So that's the interesting part of it. You can start to work before the hardware is here to actually push some deployment profile on them. And the main idea here is when you get your hardware delivered on site, if you want to have time to do things correctly, usually you order your devices in advance and you stock them in a rack dedicated to hardware to prepare. You will get them and do some specific work to initiate them for your organization environment. And this is something we will talk just after. Let's just start with this. Who here already used DP, Apple Business Manager, Apple School Manager, whatever the name you call it? Who already use it? Who does not use it? I'm curious, why do you does not use it? If some of you may share your situation.
I actually not sure how to go about it.
Okay.
The whole process seems quite intimidating.
Okay. Are you school or business?
Business.
Business. Okay. So the starting point for this, there's two starting points in the same time. So you go first to business.apple.com in your case, or school.apple.com if you are edu, and you just fill the form. The only tricky part for us as a European is you need a DUNS number. It is likely a unique ID for company worldwide provided by the American DUNS company. So you need your unique ID for your company to identify yourself as an organization for Apple, and you get registered. It's basically paperwork, but 100% free. And then the most complex part is to have an authorized supplier. If you don't get your hardware directly from Apple, but from an Apple partners, you must be sure that your partners is actually complying with the DP or whatever it is named nowadays process. This is maybe one of the most tricky part. I got a lot of situation in France where actually phone operators was supposed to comply with this process, but only one person in the whole country was aware of the process. So this where things start to be a bit complex. It's when you have to play with someone who is not Apple directly to get your hardware. So at this time, where are you getting your hardware from?
The Apple Store directly.
Okay, so here you are working with the Apple retail store to get your hardware. Just ask to talk to the business team at the Apple Store. Each retail store, Apple retail store, has a specific business team who know all this kind of process, and we are supposed to help you to get this setup. It is also paperwork just to have your organization correctly identified as a source of as an account from the Apple point of view, and they will give you what is called the SAP number that you will feed into your access to business.apple.com. And then all the things you buy from the Apple Store, by specifying that you need to use your enterprise account, will automatically fall into Apple Business Manager. So this is the starting point. If you work with Apple directly, it will be way more easy. If you work with an authorized reseller, you have to be sure that they are correctly trained to this process. And depending on the company size, for example, if your provider is a nationwide company, it may be a bit tricky to find the actual team who has the knowledge to deliver you the hardware correctly. Any other person who is not using Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager currently, and who would like to share why you are not using it?
Because I'm sole. I have my own business.
Yes.
But I have a lot of small businesses.
Okay.
And it's a lot of work to do that for the small businesses.
Okay. Yeah. It can be a bit tricky, especially if you have multiple official accounts. Let's say a splitted account from the Apple point of view. And yes, it is work to do. The thing is to consider it, will it save you time or not in the end? And if it's done properly, it will be really time saving for most of the company, even and maybe moreover for the small one. Because when you are playing like with these tools correctly, you can actually reach the zero-touch deployment really quite easily. Especially if you are a full cloud company. If you are not having server on site, you will get most of the value of it. There is one other case that we didn't talk about here is when you are in a company who is not supported by Apple Business Manager or Apple School Managers. For example, I have a customer in Egypt that does not have Apple School Manager over there. So this one be of the tricky point here. If you are trying to do things correctly, but you are not in a country where Apple allow you to use these whole nice and shiny features, well, you may have an issue. One of the workaround is basically to open your DP account, your Apple Business School or Apple Business or School Manager account on another country. If you have a foundation in America or something when you are at school, this will help. But if you have no way to have legal access to a country where Apple Business or School Manager is available, then you will have some issue. And this is where the alternate path will start at the next cycle. For now, let's just stick to the standard cycle, the official way, and let's continue with preparing the hardware. Regardless of the zero-touch deployment thing, where IT does not have to actually do IT work on the hardware, you still have to manage it, and especially to manage the delivery of the hardware from your supplier to your company, and then the delivery from your company to your employee. This is still work to do, and especially in terms of asset management. This is a starting point where you are supposed to get the hardware you got delivered, add all the accessories you need, like power supply, headset, goodies from your companies, asset tag maybe, paperwork needed to fill when you give a device to a company, a user, something like that. So there it's, even if it's zero touch in terms of IT work, there it's still hardware touch, let's say, just to handle the delivery of the hardware. And this is one of the points where it starts to be interesting. Few companies decide to deliver the Mac in the original box to the employee and let the employee do the unboxing part. I do prefer to unbox it at the company side or as the IT team or any kind of local team who do just delivery management, just to unbox it, eventually add the asset tag, and then package it again, but in a corporate way, like official bag of the company with accessories and things like that. And this will have even more sense when we will have done the full cycle. You will see that in a moment. So I'm curious, who is currently doing zero touch? Who is currently doing it by just giving new hardware in the box to the employee? Or who is following something like that with a first step non-IT preparation just for asset management? Who want to share? Yes?
Oh, just which hand is which hand?
Oh, so who deliver in box?
Yeah, you asked me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, hello.
Hi.
Robin Reactor. We usually do the preparation work, like you said, like you prefer that the IT will unbox the computer, make some basic installations for it, tag it, and give it to the user, because we feel that the end user gets the feeling that they're actually taken care of.
So you are also doing the software part.
Yeah, a bit.
Yes.
Not
too
too
much,
much, but a little. So
yes.
that it's sort of, so it's a usable computer.
Yes. So for your point of view, you are considering that end user time must not be used for IT preparation, and you want them to have a device who is almost usable directly.
Yeah, correct. Also, It takes a lot of time, so we try to minimize the time that IT needs to actually roll on the computer. But still, we like to give the people the feeling that they're being taken care of.
Yes. I'm curious, what is the size of your organization?
Currently 600.
Okay,
so
nice.
It's a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Any, yes? Gentleman on back. Whoa.
Yeah, I'm Francis. I'm from the University of Oslo. We have like 3,000 machines, and we try zero touch, but we feel that it's not mature yet, in the sense that if the end user doesn't have network, if somehow the bootstrap packages are not pushed, then we need to assist them nevertheless. And that's the biggest problem we face. So I get a lot of complaints from IT people. I say, Dep Notify didn't kick in because AirWatch Workspace 1 failed to push it, or for whatever reason. So we feel that it might not be there yet. We want to be there, but...
Okay, that's an interesting feedback, and that will lead to 2 or 3 steps next. So I will be back on this in a minute. But here, one of the points with the zero-touch process is you will rely on third-party tools to make it work. And you will have to understand what is the limit of the tools you chose. And when I will start to talk about MDM, and as you've seen, I didn't talk about MDM yet, because it's not that mandatory in the way we work. It's interesting to understand what is the MDM, and we will have a talk about this in a few minutes. So yeah, the whole thing about zero-touch deployment is internet must be here. And if you don't have unfiltered internet access at the time you are deploying the software, you will experience deep pain. So it's really something to keep in mind. Yes?
The killer thing for us was naming of the machines. We name our machines with the asset tag.
Yes?
And with zero touch, you can't get that done without intervention somewhere other than the user.
You could use a script-based scenario where do you have a central solution who keep you track of the asset by serial number?
Yes, we do.
So usually what I do in such a scenario where naming of the device is mandatory to be related to the asset number, post-deployment, we use scripts to request the asset database and matching our serial number with the asset tag. And so apply it post-deployment.
Yeah, but then that applies it to the host name. And the host name, we have a problem with tombstoning in our DNS. So we then have problems with network connectivity.
Okay, because you are binding your Mac to your directory.
Not necessarily, but there's tombstoning in our DNS,
okay,
which will cause problems. So we prefer to have the machines named
before
as they come in, which causes us a problem. Otherwise, as I say, the tombstoning.
Do you have your networking part done just at the time of the deployment or just before, just after?
They're connected to the Ethernet.
Yes.
So they go on, they'll come in as iMac or whatever it is.
Yes.
Then we'll get them renamed with a script.
Yes.
To the actual, with
yes.
user intervention. But the problem we have is that we have a less than rigorous cleaning of our DNS. So once something gets a bad IP address, a bad host name, it can take a while for that to be removed. So it degrades the experience users
okay.
get.
Usually the workaround in this scenario is to do your first deployment on a specific deployment network where your script starts.
We haven't got space for it.
Yeah. That's
and the other problem is we have a managed service.
yeah.
Storage of the managed service is what, 30 miles away?
Yeah.
Stuff gets delivered on the day.
Yeah.
We don't actually have a set-up environment where we have space to do it. If we're lucky, we'll find a template.
Do you have VLAN tagging?
No.
Okay. Then you are stuck.
Yeah.
Sorry. One other thing could be, and what other thing I do a lot of time for my customer, but more in a secure environment, we are using 802.1x on the LAN. And so we consider the guest network when we are unauthenticated as our deployment network, leaving us in a scenario where we can actually do the initial deployment, applying scripts, and when we are ready, allowing the device to go on the authenticated network and go to the production one. So that's also one of the workarounds, but maybe, yes, in your scenario, that might be complex. Please?
One thing that puzzles me, and I've not been able to get an answer to, when we set up a new device for somebody, we'll start by setting up an admin account, and that's for us to go in and use if we ever need to do things that require admin privileges. And then we will set up a second standard account for
yes.
the user. Can that be done using zero-touch deployment?
Okay.
Setting up two separate accounts.
Yes. Thanks for the question, because this is actually a really good transition to the next slide, where I will answer yours. So, Once you have your company packaging done and you have your new user onboarding, you will deliver what you have prepared. New computer, bags with full of goodies and computers and everything. If you are following the standard path nowadays for Mac devices deployment, you will be mainly in a mono-user scenario. One device for one user. One Mac for one user per Mac. Using the standard deployment scenario, you will rely on the automated enrollment process where during the initial setup assistant of your Mac, under the conditions that you have an internet access, of course, you will have a specific new form that is not available on the standard process. This form, especially if you never see this one, it's a special step in the setup assistant available only for deployment managed by a company, and where you can actually ask setup assistant to authenticate your end user against your directory. So the authentication here is done by the MDM, not by the directory directly from your computer. It's not a direct link between the computer and the directory. It's your computer being asked by Apple Business or Apple School Manager to register to your MDM, and your MDM is actually asking, okay, I will enroll you, but first you need to prove me that you're actually one of our employees. And then the system asks for login and password from the setup assistant. Starting to this point, the device will be associated on the MDM to the end user. So you are actually doing a part of your asset management here. But one of the things here, when we are customizing the setup assistant with MDM features, we are having the ability to manage also the account creation. When you are in a mono-user environment, you are encouraged by Apple to use local accounts, not directory-bound account. You use a local account created by the setup assistant. And with MDM, using Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager, you have the ability to say, okay, my first user created by the setup assistant will be a standard one, not an admin one. And I will also have the ability to create a hidden admin account, also called auto admin account when you look at the MDM documentation. So when you are customizing your setup assistant, you have the way to say, okay, deploy my Mac, remove a useless screen, like for example, term and condition. When you are in an organization, it's not to the end user to accept the term and condition of macOS. So for example, skip the term and condition, skip the Apple Pay things, and add the authentication to the MDM, and also create an admin account that will be hidden with a password managed by the MDM, and also request setup assistant to create the initial user as a standard one. Those are two different features. You can also say create hidden admin account and let the initially created user as an admin. Both are possible. You can always have your hidden admin account and as a choice to say, well, my local user, is it an admin or a standard? You have both options. When you are doing this, there is something called MDM-enabled user. When you are playing with mono-user scenario, only the first user who has been created during the setup assistant get full MDM capabilities. If you create another user locally on the machine, the device will be managed by the MDM, but not necessarily the second user. So when you are playing with mono-user devices, only the first user created during the setup assistant get full MDM experience. And when we will talk about MDM, there is features that are available only at the user level. Those features will work only for the first user who has been created during the setup assistant, not for the admin and not for upcoming users that you may create after. So this is something to keep in mind, and this is one of the reasons you may want to use the built-in feature to create the user when you are playing with local users. Network users, we will talk about this later. Who is currently using this kind of scenario? Authenticating with DEP and creating the local user. Okay. Who is currently relying on network users? No one. Almost no one. Okay, perfect. Okay. Did you had a good or bad experience and or something you want to share with this part of the deployment process? Yes, please.
One problem we had with this was FileVault.
Yes.
So there is various versions of OS X that have macOS, whatever, have issues with the token,
Yes.
the secure token. So
Yes.
if you would create a certain accounts, then you have to like run this little script to promote the account to have a secure token to be able to then run FileVault 2.
Yes.
And there was a whole load of bugs and fixes and this,
Yes.
that doesn't work. And then, yeah, so that was a real
Okay, yeah.
complication with it.
This relies to the APFS update, where with 10.13, it has been quite a complex situation to handle FireVault. So I will give you feedback on this regarding the current version of macOS. What you are expected to have if you work with the updated version of macOS, where most of the bug has been fixed. If you are using local users creating during the setup assistant, like I've just said, you are supposed to have the secure token needed for FireVault created on the first ever user connecting to the login window. And then be able with this user to enable FireVault. This is how it should work nowadays without a lot of bugs. One of the points is it must be this user to connect. So as an IT, if you are playing with another kind of scenario and you are connecting your admin account first, then your admin account is the one who gets the secure token, not the end user one. And this is where things start to go wrong. So if you are playing with FireVault and want to use local users, you must ensure that the first ever user who log in is the end user account, not someone else. And then you should have all issue handled that way if you are using last version of macOS. For 10.13 and if I remember well, the first version of 10.14, there still have issue with this secure token things. And here, if you are in this scenario, the only way to fix this is to play with scripts to basically create the secure token for the currently logged users. And it's really painful work to do. So I really recommend you, if you are using the local user scenario, to enable FireVault as soon as possible. Does not make it as a compliance requirement linked to something. So as soon as possible, the system will trigger the FireVault encryption. And then you should be okay following the standard path built in Setup Assistant to have FireVault working. If you are doing it post-deployment, you will have issue and you will have to use scripting tools or remediation tools provided by MDM vendors to make it work. Good? Talking about MDM, there is things to keep in mind. MDM is a protocol provided by Apple to distribute payload containing configuration profile. MDM is just that. It's a protocol that distributes a configuration profile, and the list of supported configuration profile is provided by Apple. Look at the developer website. The documentation is public. You look for configuration profile reference guide, and you will have all features supported by the MDM protocol. When you have a third-party software editor that uses the MDM protocol, it may use it for official feature that will be handled by Apple, and by third-party features that will be handled by their own code and their own mistake. So this is something to keep in mind. All MDM vendors on the market have the same guaranteed list of functionalities. They can't go upper to what Apple has actually provided for MDM vendors. They can do less, but they can't do more. If someone is telling you that they are doing more than what Apple officially says that it is possible to do, it's because they are using a third-party tools that they will install, their own agents that they will be installed on your devices to provide additional features. But those agents will have to comply with macOS and iOS restriction and everything. So you are actually relying on something provided not by Apple, but by a third-party software editor to manage your fleet. And this is where things can go wrong in the future. You must be aware of what feature you are using. Is it a standard MDM feature or is it a third-party one? There is no issue to use a third-party one as long as you are aware of it and that you are correctly testing that the features still work in upcoming release. You may have issue when you are relying on third-party features that this feature will not work with a software update provided by Apple because Apple changed something in terms of security layers and everything, and then things broke. As long as you are okay with it, as long as you are aware that the feature you were relying for is not an official MDM feature but a third-party one, it is okay to use it. But it is something that you have to check in your security matrix, let's say, because it could break in the next software update. So this is really something to keep in mind. Most of the time, something interesting to do is to use any kind of MDM of the market to handle the built-in MDM feature, and then to use maybe their third-party clients for other things like patch management, software deployment, script deployment, or what most of us are doing right now is relying on the open source project called Monkey. This is something really interesting to use, really robust. And yes, it's a third-party thing, so it falls in the same risk area as I've just said for third-party tools. It may break in the future, depending on what Apple will do, but it's widely used by most Mac admins on the planet, so it could be interesting in terms of security for this. Who is using Monkey right now? Okay. And who is using a third-party solution provided by the MDM vendors to doing patch management and everything? Okay, nice. One of the interesting things in this scenario is you are dealing with a scenario called desired state configuration. You describe in your MDM and in your app catalog what you actually want on the device. And the device and the agents are playing for you, are working for you to make it work. That means in the future, you may move from one server to another. You may, for the email, you may add new software. The work you are doing on the app catalog or in the MDM is a work done forever. Existing devices and new devices, upcoming devices, will get the new config. You won't have this issue with like we had in the past with golden imaging and things like that, where your upcoming devices will be deployed with a former configuration that is not valid anymore. You do your work once in a central point. It's applied on all devices, past and future. That's the interesting part. At what point of the time the cycle has to end and somehow your devices will be replaced. Maybe the user are leaving the company, or maybe you are giving a new hardware to your user, to your employees, and you are getting the old back. You have to refresh them to erase the personal data of the end user, especially in Europe, GRPD, thanks. So you have to remove the personal data and to refresh the system to start with a new one. The official way of doing this, in an automated way, is to rely on the start-OS install command line. When you are getting the macOS installer from the App Store, there is a built-in command line called start-OS install that MDM or app catalogs can rely on to start an erase and install process on your devices. So usually the process I am using here with my customer is to empower the manager of the employee or the human resources team to do the errors and install. And the goal here is to have a manager or human resources doing the wipe with the offboarding employee to guarantee that the personal data are gone and be sure that all legal aspects of this are correctly handled and enforce the fact that we have correctly cleaned the device from any kind of personal data. And this is why this is something I want to do by, I want to be done by manager or human resources and not IT, because it has legal impact. At this time, who is doing refreshing whatever the solution by IT? Who is doing it by legal something, manager or human resources? None. Okay, interesting. So once you have refreshed your device, you get a device that is in a state of at the factory state. And if you remember my slide about preparing the device with bundling, with goodies and everything, this is where things start to be interesting. As soon as you are not providing hardware, new hardware inside the box, you can actually refresh the device and repackage it again in your own comparate way to provide already used hardware to some of your team, like internship or whatever, with the same end user experience from them. So this is where it starts to be interesting if you are doing your packaging by yourself. Just to have the same experience from the employee point of view when you are doing when you are distributing, to give the same end user experience when you are using new hardware and refreshed hardware. Not seeing the difference, not experiencing the difference as an employee to have new hardware or old hardware. This is why I'm really interested by doing this repackaging by the IT team or whatever team inside, is to just focus on the employee experience, on the user experience of having the same experience as anyone, regardless if it's a new hardware or a refreshed hardware. We are at the end of the cycle here. One of the alternate paths that we can have is when you have devices that is not in Apple Business Manager or Apple School Managers. With iOS, it's really easy. You can, with Apple Configurator, add them to this program. So it's perfect. But with macOS, you can't. So you have to rely on unofficial tools like Deploy Studio, Imager, Custom Script, or custom NDM payload to actually enroll your device in your workflow. This is something that, oh, my slide, yes. Thanks. So this is something that you may have to do using an official or unrecommended solution like Zeus to actually deploy your solution, your former devices. And once you do that, you are actually leaving them in the scenario ready for the distribution. One of the other paths is the multi-user devices, mainly used for lab workstation or things like that. It's unusual to have a multi-user laptop. It's more usual to have a multi-user iMac. So in this scenario, and I will be really specific about this, the only way to have the exact same user experience in multi-user and in mono-user, that is to mean the only user way to have MDM-enabled user on a device who is multi-users is to rely on a directory bind. You have a lot of third-party solutions that will help you to manage additional local accounts, but none of them will be MDM enabled. The only way to have an MDM enabled user coming as an additional user for multi-user scenario is to rely on a network bound, Active Directory or custom LDAP, whatever, and have MDM that comply with the protocol called, the extension protocol called network user extension from the MDM. This is something described by Apple as an extension of the MDM protocol, and actually the login window will report the current user connected, the ID of the current user connected to the device, to the MDM, to allow the MDM to manage this specific session. This is the only way to have full experience. The whole question right now in the community is, do you need the full experience or not? If you don't want the full experience and you don't care about managing the user level, then you may rely on local users. But if you want to handle the whole, to use the whole panel of feature provided by the MDM, then you must use a network bind. This is one of the interesting points between the two paths. If you are using mono user, you don't care about being on site to deploy. You just care about internet access. So if you are a full cloud company working from anywhere in a co-space area without office and everything, you want to go local users. If you are on site with your directory available when you deploy and everything, then you may use multi-user scenario. Not sure if you have to, but you can do. One of the differences between the two scenarios is when you are using multi-user scenario, you won't rely on DEP to authenticate your user, your end device. Your device will get automatically enrolled to the device. The directory profile will be pushed by the device manager, and then the login window will be able to access your network users. This is the only official way to have multi-users working at 100% on macOS. All of the solutions, you will have to play with MDM feature and alternate features to correctly handle your scenario, with the risk of alternate features being somehow corrupted in the future. So this is something to keep in mind and to be sure that when you are playing with your scenario and handling local users and network and at least handling the multi-user scenario, which path you want to go. One thing also interesting in the mindset of the lifecycle of the Mac, all things going in terms of application deployment, generally done by a third-party app catalog, can be automated too. If you are relying on Monkey or even some other solution, you can use auto package to automatically download, for example, the daily Flash Player upgrade, download it, package it, make it available to your endpoints. This is one of the parts which is interesting too. And if I look back to the refresh slide that you didn't see before, there is a StartOS install feature with the official one, but in some scenario, you can still rely on imaging if you want. Imaging it dead, almost. You may want to use it. If you are still using it at this time, it still works for most of the scenario. In the future, it will break, but you have time to adapt your scenario to a StartOS install if you want. You can still use all other solutions at this time, depending on your devices, to make it work correctly, but you have to be aware that this will break in the future. So this is the end of my presentation, and with I don't know where we are in terms of time. I don't know.
About 5 minutes behind, I think.
Okay. So maybe not question, depending, maybe one or two.
Probably, let me just check the thing. Could probably get a couple in, if there are any.
Yeah.
Yeah, one
Yeah,
or two
so
questions.
if you have question or feedback or whatever in terms of lifecycle of what we've seen, please feel free.
Hello. I have a question about Monkey. To my understanding, this is not a pure MDM solution, but it's capable of deploying configuration profiles. And
Yes.
I wonder if anybody is using Monkey solely as a whole MDM replacement and deployment solution.
Okay, so the
Without
question is, Monkey as a replacement of MDM to use configuration, to deploy configuration profile.
Yeah.
So, as I said before, MDM is a protocol used to deploy a configuration profile. It's not the only way to deploy a configuration profile, and indeed you can use Monkey to deploy a profile. The only thing is some profile cannot be deployed unless it is done by MDM. Some part of it, like for example, the whitelisting of a kernel extension in Mojave can be done only if it's pushed by MDM. And even more, a user-approved MDM, what is something where the user has applied twice when it is a self-enrollment or when it's done with Apple Business Manager. In this case, when it's done with Apple Business Manager, you have a user-approved MDM, and then you have the right to use some specific payloads that are restricted to company usage only. That's the main things. When you are using only Monkey to deploy a profile, some of those features will not be available. And this is where it's also interesting to have a user enabled in terms of MDM point of view, and not relying on third-party solution for the multi-user scenario. It is because some of the features may not be available to deploy if you are not in a managed MDM scenario.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Other question or feedback on whatever in terms of... Yeah, please.
Thank you. I want to come back to that FileVault theme.
Yes.
So if I understand right, I can block setup assistant to give further until I have a package deployed that does the AD binding. And once the machine is bound to AD, then I'm good because the first user that's created will be a mobile account through AD, and then it has the secure token? Okay. Question?
No. What I've said about FileVault was in a mono-user scenario where you are relying on local users. Playing with FileVault with Active Directory users require indeed for the users to be mobile account, but will need additional work to be done locally to enable these users. Clearly, at the current state of the solution we have, FireVault is for mobile devices, and mobile devices are for one-to-one users, and so rely on local accounts, so direct devices not bound to a directory service. And current state of management of the Mac, directory service are for labs, workstation, and things like that, that does not leave the company and does not require the FireVault part. This is the mindset where you can handle it without issue. If you want directory bind end user to have access to FireVault devices, this is 100% possible, but you will need additional work to enable those users to have access to the secure token. This is where third-party solution like you may have in MDM could help you to leverage this scripting that has to be done to enable a network user to get the secure token. This is where third-party tools get the value just for that. You can do it by your own using sysadmin CTL command line and enable the mobile account to get a secure token. This is possible, but it is additional work to do. In some scenario, playing correctly with I deploy the Mac, I bound it to the device, to the directory service, the first user who log in ever is the end user, and it's automatically a mobile account. In some scenario, you should have your secure token. But in most, you may have to rely on additional tools, like, for example, the Workspace ONE agent or the Jamf agent to enable those users to get the secure token.
Thanks.
Okay. I think we are done. Thanks a lot for attending the session, and sorry for the slide. Thank you.